Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan, and I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're just going to do a quick midweek update about the Safe Banking Act being excluded from the relief package and a new potential catalyst because of it. So before we jump in, if you enjoy this video at any point or if you learned something, please just leave a thumbs up on the video. That's all I ask. I'd really appreciate it, and it helps my channel out. And then, of course, if you want to learn more and get caught up to speed in this industry, take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any new episodes. So without further ado, the big news this week is that the relief package was sent out to the American people, and the Safe Banking Act was not a part of it. It was excluded when essentially all the Safe Banking Act would allow is for financial institutions to provide traditional banking services to state legal cannabis businesses without fear of federal punishment. And is that too much to ask for anyone in the cannabis industry to be treated fairly and just be able to open a bank account? Absolutely not. And I mean, of course, this is not even the worst part. It's just the fact that the government in power right now thinks it's morally fair to send $600 only to the American people, and as if that's enough, and as like a, hey, here, considering the terrible leadership we've displayed this year, not showing you how to, prepare and prevent a virus, and not telling you to wear a mask, here's just $600 on top of it. It's very sad. So to think that Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, would have gone through this 5,500-page document. And I mean, obviously, none of these politicians could read a document that big, not even 1% of it. But to go through that and nitpick and take the safe banking out, even though it was part of the initial U.S. House relief measure, that is what's extremely sad. That just goes to show how much money is still against cannabis, but there's good news that there is still a lot of money going towards cannabis and more lobbying than ever before, as we've seen. So that's what brings this new catalyst. There's still hope cannabis banking reform can be included if there's a push, or can be included if there's a push for additional COVID-19 stimulus after President-elect Joe Biden assumes office in January. This could be huge. Who's saying this? David Mangone, Director of Policy for the Liaison Group, a Washington, D.C. firm that lobbies in the National Cannabis Roundtable. So again, this is a big if there's a push, but I think the main reason there might actually and possibly would be a push is because $600 is not enough to tie the American people over. And if Biden wants to be a good leader, I mean, he's been a politician all his life. He knows that at least the American people need money, and they do need some sort of jobs and tax relief and social justice that cannabis would provide. So that is a new catalyst that could potentially happen after the January 5th vote. But so, of course, main thing again, anyone that's new here or hasn't paid attention, the first biggest catalyst we are waiting on is January 5th. If both Democrats win this race on January 5th, and it seems to be quite close, who knows how accurate these polls are. It's more for entertainment than anything, I would imagine. But if the Democrats win both races, then the Senate flips blue, and we will see cannabis reform much sooner than later. However, if one of the Republicans wins either race, then the Senate does not flip, and it remains a Republican majority Senate. So that is a big deal, and that stands in the way of cannabis. So this is the big thing, the big catalyst that we're waiting on. After this, we consider it. So again, very close. We'll just have to wait until the day. After that, we do have this thought that there could be the Safe Banking Act, at least added in additional COVID stimulus, because just this effort has been so bad. There would likely be another one because, it's just that bad that they actually need relief. Like, that's $600 is not relief. So that's the second catalyst that could potentially be new, and it's just better to have that than not. And then the third, though, is still the new Senate banking chair, who is a Republican senator from Pennsylvania, Pat Toomey, who has said that he would consider passing the Safe Banking Act because he represents Pennsylvania, and where his constituents have access to legal medical cannabis but not adult rec use. But why wouldn't anyone working in the industry for the adult legal or for the adult medical not be able to open bank accounts or work with banks? And that is absurd, and he even sees the hypocrisy. So that is also the third catalyst we would have, even if the vote in Georgia on January 5th doesn't go the way we would like. So that is great news. Just wanted to point that out. So despite the fact that, cannabis banking reform will have to wait, that's okay. If you've been investing in cannabis, we're used to this. These hurdles take a long time, but we know that the reality on the ground is that these companies are crushing it. And despite the fact that they can't even open bank accounts and have to operate in cash, despite the fact that they're paying higher taxes than normal because they're dealing with cannabis, which is a federally illegal plant, they're still crushing it. And that is what we can look forward to the most. And that's what we're optimistic about. So one thing that at least I want to point out from New Cannabis Ventures is look for the cannabis industry mergers and acquisitions to take off in 2021. Why? Well, the American cannabis industry is ending 2020 on a high note with strong growth, easier to access equity and debt capital, despite still not being able to open with a bank account, and expanding opportunities as more states legalize, right? So the reality is that politicians just aren't paying attention and they don't want to look at cannabis because they're being paid not to. So when we actually look, though, there are now 9 multi-state operators with market caps above $1 billion, with more on the way through new public companies that will begin trading in Q1. And there's been a lot of M&A talks going on. Air Strategies is making a lot of purchases. Recently just purchased Liberty Health Sciences, so that's one. Obviously, we have Aphria and Tilray combining. That was another big one. Earlier this year, we had Curaleaf and Grassroots. So the main thing, though, is that doing a large multi-state acquisition is challenging in the cannabis industry, as many states cap the number of licenses an operator can hold, sometimes at just one. So because of all the different state laws, it makes it really tough. The American cannabis industry remains highly fragmented, and we see consolidation ahead. Now, consolidation is not a bad thing at all, considering that all these companies are really doing is just feeding an American demand that's there. And why I just want to point out that these mergers and acquisitions will be different than the ones we saw in Canada, and therefore far less risky, is just because in Canada, you saw Aphria, even Aurora and Canopy making large investments in Latin America, where laws had not changed at all, where it was still illegal for medicinal and adult use. So there's just bad investments that never panned out, and that forced them to have a ton of goodwill on their balance sheet that they eventually had to write off, and that's not good for shareholder value, right? So you want to look at those things. Now, of course, though, that's why I'm still staying away from any mergers and acquisitions. I mean, I'm in the middle of one, just not by choice, by chance, because I own Aphria myself, and I'm just obviously going to hold through because long term I think that's going to be a good winner. But ultimately, I think it would be easier to try to find any of these multi-state operators that are above the $1 billion market cap, but not too high the $1 billion mark, and try to find companies that are there with little debt or at least a good margin of safety so that they're not going to fall much further. And then so you would want to look at their market caps and then look at their balance sheets and their revenue and see how much growth they're seeing quarter over quarter. Because if you can find a company that's a safe one to get into, and again, around that $1 billion or $2 billion that's feeding a new market, like New Jersey, for example, or Arizona, for example, which adult use should start as of March. That's when it's scheduled to. That's 15 million more people getting access to something that was only accessible illegally beforehand, right? So it makes me very optimistic. I'm myself, again, just sticking with the big ones that I've already mentioned in previous videos. The established companies. However, again, I think there's the upside in trying to find that low market cap with a high margin of safety and more chance to go up. And how can you do that? Well, I want to point you to Young Justin on Twitter. He is a great resource, just as someone that's also passionate and follows the cannabis industry. And he found this amazing report from Cantor Fitzgerald, an analyst firm that basically has done the cannabis stock valuations, and what we can see here is just how undervalued especially the U.S. multi-state operators are. When they're trading, net sales almost at $1 billion, and market caps again here. So this is how you could identify the market caps, and then from the market cap, you can then go to the company's website and start looking at their revenues over the last years and see how much it's grown, and obviously try to see which ones are profitable and whatnot. You can see that in here as well, but the main thing is when we look at enterprise value to current sales, we see here Kronos is trading at the highest one, 35. That almost looks like a tech company, or, a faster growing one. But then we've got Canopy here at 21, and then we've got Aphria sitting at 11. And that's why, myself, I've invested in Aphria as they've won the Canadian market and they're the best position for the global outlook. But look at the US MSOs, especially when you consider their enterprise value and next year 2021 sale predictions. They're trading at a multiple of 5 and 6, 4, a multiple this low. When, a PE ratio, you could almost look at, from 10 to 20 is the safe spot. This is where there's a lot of hidden value, folks. So I just wanted to point that out and, screenshot this resource, use it. Thank you, Justin, for showing this. And then last but not least, I just wanted to show you what Aphria has already taken a head start doing, getting their US patents filed so that they could use these trademarks to put on their Sweetwater drinks and start marketing to the US subliminally through their Sweetwater drinks using their Canadian brands, so that eventually, once federal laws do change in time and this whole industry does open up, it's just a cool way that Aphria has, bought a brew company to basically put their labels on them and market through them without actually being able to market legally or actually access the market kind of thing. I find that interesting. Just wanted to point that out, but that's just my bias and whatnot. So anyways, folks, hope you enjoyed this video. What do you think? Does this make you worry? Have you been in the investment, or have you been following cannabis stocks for a long time? And does this make you think that we're just waiting again for more? I'm quite optimistic that January 5th might go well, but again, we have to prepare for the worst. So let me know in the discussion or in the comments, what you think. I'd love to start a discussion. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more. And I just want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next Sunday for another video.